Boards in team managed Jira projects are a great way to help your team manage their work, but they can be a bit confusing to set up and configure. So let me show you how it's done. Team managed projects in Jira are great for smaller teams that need to just get work done without having to worry about sharing configurations or work with admins. Now, you might eventually end up in a space where you do need a company managed project. There are more features and they share different configurations. However, being a project admin of a team managed project means you can make changes to your project. And this is great, but it does mean you have to know how they all work. And boards particularly can be confusing. Your team could be using Scrum or Kanban, and you might not know how to enable Jira to support that. So first, we're going to dig in and just look at a board, and I'll walk you through the various features that are available. And then we'll look under the hood, and you'll learn how you can do things like add columns, add swim lanes, or even turn on or off a backlog. Now, keep in mind exactly how you use the board will differ based on your team's needs, but you will, by the end of this video, understand how to configure it to meet the needs of your team. So let's jump into Jira Cloud Premium, and I'll show you what it looks like. Here I have an example of a team managed project. Now I know this is a team managed project because if I click on the three dots, I can see team managed. Now in order to modify and configure this board, I'll have to be a project administrator. Now this might require you to go to someone else on your team or talk to IT, but once you have that access, you can open up the board tab and you'll see a gear icon. That lets you know you have the appropriate access. Before we dig into that though, let's just take a look at this board and see what's here. At the top, I have some options to search and filter through the board, very useful for my team to find things, and I can quickly filter by assignee. And I can even add in custom filters. I'll show you how to do this as an admin in a minute. And then I just have the columns. Now by default, each status in your project will have a column, so this should very loosely map to your workflow. I will show you though how you can combine multiple statuses into a single column. Up in the top right, I'll have different options depending on which features I have enabled. In this case, I'm looking at a Scrum board because I see a complete sprint button as well as a sprint details button. If I'm using this for Kanban, I wouldn't see these. I also have the ability to group or create swim lanes by different options, get some insights, and view various settings around the board. So that is what the board looks like and usually how our team works with it. In order to change configurations though, I can click on this gear or I can go into my project settings and look for my board menu. Either one will take me here. The first option I have is my columns. Now, as we saw earlier, we had 4 columns, but there are more than 4 statuses in this project. And what we've done is we've set our in progress column could be either the in progress status or the test status. If I need to change this, I can just click and drag to remap the status to a different column. Now this won't change the work items. All it does is change where they're shown on the board. So I can do this anytime. Make sure you tell your team though, so they don't get confused when things move. You can unassign a status. However, work items in this column won't show up on the board at all when they're in that status. This can be confusing to your team because work items will seem to disappear when they get transitioned. So if people complain things disappear, they could be ending up over here. You can always click and drag to remap it, and then you can add new columns if you need to. One thing to keep in mind is you can never have a column with no status. So I'll quickly add a new one and give it a name, but Jira is not going to let me save this until I put a status in this column. So I'm quickly just going to delete this column. And again, deleting a column doesn't impact the work items, it just removes it from your board. There is one other thing I can do to a column, and that is add a maximum number of work items. This is mostly used in Kanban in order to support work in progress limits. But you could also put it in a Scrum board. One thing to note is team managed boards do not support a minimum number of work items. That's a feature in company managed projects, so if you need that, you can't use a team managed project. I can, however, just enter the maximum number and hit update, and then I'll visually see the maximum of 3. All this will do is make the column header red when there are more than 3 work items to let my team know, hey, there's too many things here. I can also click and drag and just reorder the columns. Now, typically my work goes from left to right, so I want the first column to be the to-do or beginning and then progress through the status, but it depends entirely on how your team's operating. Once you've made all your changes, just click Save, and this will save any column changes you've made and make them instantly available. Next, I have column filters. Now, these are custom filters we can add, so what you put in here will depend on your team's needs, but this might be something like a certain priority, or it might be a certain type of work item you need to draw attention to. You can always hit Create and add in new ones, and you'll just have to define them using JQL or Jira query language. You can always come in and edit them. So here I have priority high. Maybe I change this to high or highest. And once I update, this filter is now instantly available. I'm going to pop back to the board and just show you where this lives, right up at the top under Custom Filters. And this will then filter work items in the board. Work with your team to figure out what would be most useful to them, and then you can make it much easier for them to navigate. Back in my settings, I can also add a cover image to the cards. Now, if there is an image attached to the work item, this will show up. So it will make it look a little bit nicer and visually pleasing. This is something that is not easily doable in a company managed project, so one feature on the team managed that can make it easier to see. This again is entirely up to your team, but can be a nice visual indicator of what's important or what the work item is about. So these are the settings that we have as a project admin on the board itself, covering things like the columns, the filters, and card image. There are, however, other things we as the project admin have access to control the board under the Features menu. Now, this includes a lot of features around the entire project, not just things that impact our boards. So you do want to be familiar with these because you are a project admin, but there are some that are very important to your board. Now, one feature that will be important to you using boards is the backlog. You can optionally turn this off. This, however, is required to use a Scrum board. So if I try and turn this one off, I'm going to get a warning from Jira saying, hey, we'll have to turn off sprints because sprints and Scrum use the backlog. So just keep in mind, if you disable it, you'll lose that ability to plan your sprints. The next one we should take a look at is sprints. You could have a backlog without a sprint. Some kind of Kanban can do this, so you can just turn this off. And last, you have estimation. If you're planning on tracking things like velocity or story points or time, this is where you'll make that determination. You can turn it off entirely, or choose which metric to use, story points or time. So depending on the needs of your team, you can turn these features on or off, and you can always come back and turn them on or off later. Just be aware it will impact how folks use the project, so make sure you're talking to your team about it. So those are the three main features we have: the backlog, the sprints, and the estimation. And again, depending on what's been turned on, we'll have different features available. In this example, we're looking at a Scrum board because it has sprints when I go into the backlog, and that sprint button right up at the top. So that is how to configure and manage your boards in a team-managed Jira project. Again, you'll have to be the project administrator of that project, which means you'll have other access as well. But you can make changes on the fly to support your team. There are some downsides to the team-managed project, though. One is you have limited options on the board. You can't, for example, define your own swim lanes with a query like you can at a company-managed project. You also can't pull in work items from other projects. By default, every work item in that team-managed project will be in the board. And that's just how team-managed projects work. They're intended to be something that's quick and easy to manage, but are limited in terms of features. So if you have additional requirements, you might need to talk to your Jira admin about getting a company-managed project. But for many smaller teams, having a team-managed project is a great tool and a great way to empower them to be successful. I am curious what you think, though, and how you use boards. Please drop a comment below with your questions or sharing your use case. Also, if you're looking for more support and community, check out the Discord link up in the corner here. There's hundreds of folks talking about different Atlassian topics and just sharing information and ideas. And I do want to give a shout out to my members. Thank you so much for your support. You help me make this possible. And if you're curious on supporting the channel, consider becoming a member. It's a great way to let me know you think this is good stuff and also to get some extra perks for yourself. So thank you for learning about team-managed Jira boards with me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you in one of these again soon.
Me again. Thank you so much for watching that video. Check out more here and pop down into the description. I've got a blog with weekly content. I also have a lot of online learning on Atlassian stuff and project management. And if you need personalized training for you and your team, reach out and let me know. I'll be happy to get something set up for you. Thanks again for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you here again soon.